The Great Sphinx of Giza. You know it, you've seen the pictures. A lion's body, a human head, all carved from one single chunk of stone. Now the official story, the one in all the textbooks, says it was built about 4,500 years ago by the pharaoh Khafre. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the real history of the Sphinx is way older, way more mysterious, and what if it's being actively hidden from all of us? Our story really kicks off with this totally shocking discovery back in 1935. A researcher, Hamilton N. Wright, announced that his team had found a huge underground system on the Giza Plateau. And he didn't just call it a tomb, he called it a subway, with these massive shafts plunging 125 feet straight down into the bedrock. This was huge news for about 5 minutes. So what in the world did they actually find down there in this underground city? And maybe the even bigger question is, why did one of the most incredible archaeological finds of the 20th century just vanish? Why did the story just go silent?
I mean, look at how fast this all went down. In 1923, the world goes crazy for Egypt when King Tut's tomb is found. Then, early 1935, Wright makes this unbelievable discovery of tunnels. But by the end of that exact same year, the Egyptian authorities put a gag order on the whole thing and poof, it's gone. The story just disappears from the public record.
But what's really wild is that Wright's discovery wasn't totally out of the blue. It actually confirmed these ancient legends. I'm talking about the Greek historian Herodotus, who wrote about a giant underground labyrinth. And then 800 years after him, a philosopher named Iamblichus gets even more specific, talking about tunnels right in the belly of the Sphinx that connect to the Great Pyramid. Okay, and this is where the story takes a sharp turn into the bizarre. Because 3 years before Hamilton Wright ever found those tunnels, an American psychic, they called him the Sleeping Prophet, had already said he knew what was hiding under the sand. His name was Edgar Cayce. Now I know what you're thinking, but before you just dismiss this guy, you have to look at his track record. Cayce had this unnerving habit of being right. He predicted the 1929 stock market crash, the rise and fall of Hitler, the end of the Soviet Union. He even predicted that America's 44th president would be black. So many of his predictions came true that people took him very, very seriously. And this is the bombshell. In 1932, again, 3 years before those tunnels were found, Cayce predicts that a hall of records is hidden right under the Sphinx's paws, and that it would contain the true history of all humanity. Oh, and he even gave a specific time frame for when we'd find it, the 1990s. So you have these wild predictions, you have buried evidence of tunnels. All of this forced people to go back and take a hard look at the official story of the Sphinx. And when they did, well, they started to find some pretty serious cracks. So the official story says the face of the Sphinx is Pharaoh Khafre. But just look, forensic artists have studied this, and they're clearly two different people. The big giveaway is the angle from the corner of the lip to the corner of the eye. On the Sphinx, it's really wide and flat. On the statue of Khafre, it's much steeper. They just don't match, period. And then there's this little problem. An artifact called the inventory stela, found way back in the 1850s, says that Khafre's father, Khufu, found the Sphinx already there and had to repair it. So let me get this straight. How could Khafre have built something that his own father was already fixing years before he even took the throne? So this is the really crucial point, right? If the face isn't Khafre's and an ancient Egyptian artifact says the Sphinx was already old in his father's time, then the whole official history is just wrong. So who actually built it? And more importantly, when? And the debate really heated up in the 1990s, which, remember, is right when Edgar Cayce predicted a discovery would be made. This is when a geologist brought a completely new kind of evidence to the table, and it changed the entire argument forever.
So this geologist, Robert Schoch, he looked at the stone walls of the pit the Sphinx sits in. The official story is that it's been worn down by 4,500 years of wind and sand, which creates these smooth, horizontal layers. But Schoch saw these deep, vertical fissures, a classic textbook example of erosion caused by thousands of years of heavy rain running down the rock.
This was so obvious, geologically speaking, that one of the researchers, John Anthony West, showed a picture of the enclosure, but with the Sphinx's head covered up, to an Oxford geologist. He just asked him what caused this weathering, and without even hesitating, the expert said it was unquestionably water. So, that leads to a huge question. When was the last time the Giza Plateau, which is now a desert, had enough heavy, non-stop rain to cause that kind of damage? Well, the geological record is crystal clear on this one. at the end of the last ice age, around 12,000 years ago.
Now, for years, the biggest argument against this older date was always, okay, but where's the proof of a civilization advanced enough to build the Sphinx 12,000 years ago? And for a long time, that was a fair question. Until suddenly, it wasn't. Check out this timeline. We all think of Stonehenge as ancient, right? Well, a site called Göbekli Tepe in modern Turkey is older than Stonehenge by more time than Stonehenge is older than us today. Just let that sink in for a second. It dates to the exact same period that the water erosion on the Sphinx points to.
And we're not talking about a few mud huts. Göbekli Tepe, discovered in 1994, is a massive, complex site with these huge 18-foot-tall pillars covered in incredible 3D carvings. It is the absolute smoking gun. It is undeniable proof that a sophisticated culture, one that was perfectly capable of creating monoliths, existed 12,000 years ago.
So you have all this evidence, right? The tunnels, the face, the water erosion, now Göbekli Tepe. It all paints this radical new picture of our past. So how did the official gatekeeper of Egypt's history, Dr. Zahi Hawass, react to all of this new information?
Well, his reaction is a story all by itself. First, he publicly laughed at the water erosion theory and actually banned the researchers from Giza. But then, a year later, he was secretly leading his own multi-million-dollar project to explore those exact same tunnels, even excitedly yelling on camera, "Even Indiana Jones will never dream to be here." And then, just as fast, he shut the whole thing down, claiming, "Nope, nothing to see here."
And what about Göbekli Tepe, that irrefutable proof of a 12,000-year-old civilization? Well, during a public debate in 2015, someone asked him about it, and Hawass got all flustered and basically acted like he'd never even heard of one of the single most important archaeological sites on the entire planet.
Which brings us to today, and this is the situation on the ground. The known shafts and entrances on the Sphinx's head and its back, they are sealed shut with concrete. Access is totally denied. Independent research is banned. The entire area is under a complete lockdown. And that brings us to this final, really tantalizing mystery. If you visit the Sphinx today, you'll see these modern-looking floorboards, and they're placed right between its paws, the exact spot where, nearly a century ago, Edgar Cayce predicted a Hall of Records would be found. So you have to ask, what is underneath them? And why, after all these strange discoveries and even stranger denials, is this one spot still so carefully hidden from the world?